there's sort of a obscure kind of prophecy that the Jewish people will realize that their Messiah has wounded hands and wounded feet, that they will petition for their Messiah. They will realize it's Jesus, and that is sort of like a precondition, kind of, sort of. But I think that that's essentially the idea behind his attempt at complete destruction of the Jewish people, because he thinks if he can destroy them all, that he can stop that from happening. It's his only hope, if you think about it. He knows the prophecy that this return spells his end. He knows that, at least in some level, he can't deal with that. But at the same time, he's trying everything possible. You got to give him credit. He's extremely, you know, his work ethic, if nothing else. But so I think that on a demonic level, they're just following orders. That what they understand more than anything else is fear. There is a hierarchy in the demonic world. I think Ephesians 6 does go into that. We wrestle not with. Let me get to that real quick.
Oh yeah,
Last
that's a
day,
great verse.
it shows that at least there's some sort of hierarchy going on there in terms of their ranking, and I also have noticed this in terms of experientially. But for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. There seems to be an authority of demons. Russ Dizdar, we were just talking about, he speaks a lot about in a multiple. Oftentimes there will be what he's termed a power demon that seems to be that there's a number of demons under him that in a deliverance session, in his training sessions, he talks about dealing with that entity first and getting that out before, and then the other ones will, be easier and all this stuff. So, but also basically what I'm saying is that they're in like an exact military system. That demon may be more powerful than the other demons, but they're still ultimately in a military system with Satan as the ultimate person who's directing their primary directives. So they still have an agenda. Their basic agenda is to help build this system, to build the structure of the system that will eventually enthrone him. And that's what this whole New World Order thing is doing. Every single conspiracy that we're talking about, every single, whether it's the aliens or whether it's the Ascended Masters, every demon involved in these programs is helping to shape and prepare the world for even the police state stuff is to prepare the world for him. That is the Antichrist, because he's going to force people to worship him. And that's ultimately what his goals always been, is to force people to worship him. He can't do what God can do, but he's got a pretty good plan, I think, to actually force people to do it. And I think the microchip has something to do with that. But it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, no, you made a pretty good point as far as yeah, him trying to pervert the plan as much as he can to maybe kind of slow his own defeat. Him meaning Lucifer, Satan. So I mean that kind of makes sense from a spiritual warfare perspective of trying to basically postpone the inevitable for him, or maybe he really does think he's going to win, and he's just doing all in his power that he can to stop it.
Right. I think you can see the fear of the demons in throughout the Gospels. But yeah, absolutely. One other thing, Russ Dizer always makes the point, because of you can see in the military, like a lot of these military weapons developers and stuff like that will like have day jobs doing that kind of stuff, but then they write books about channeling Egyptian gods and how they're talking with all these beings and everything, and they're getting these ideas that'll pop into their head to build this crazy new weaponry and stuff like that. And there's so many different, I mean, that's all over the place. And if you think about it, if you were Satan, if you had demons and at your disposal, that would be a great place to start giving people these ideas, because they have the power to create these weapons. But the interesting thing is what seems to be the nature of these weapons that they're developing and stuff seem to almost be like they're actually trying to physically defend against the return of Christ. I know what that sounds like, even if you were just listening to this, like, okay, that's crazy. But that's what seems to like, and you look at the theology of it, they're talking about this, return of, whatever. Anyway, the easiest way to tell is to see what being told to do by their own words. They're being told this by some Egyptian god, quote unquote, to how to build some crazy weapon.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just this idea basically that they actually are thinking that they have a chance in this return. Of course, it's part of his twisted nature. I mean, if you think of how crazy it is, he would be a created being, thinking he has a chance against an infinite being. It's not even a fair fight, but that's just the nature of the blindness of pride, and that's exactly why David Icke and the rest of them can be deceived because pride is such a easy way to be blinded.
Yeah, no, it's all about manipulation, and then people who think they're quote, oh, we're so awake, they a lot of times won't be able to see that they're being manipulated and used. Just a few other notes I have here that I wanted to bring up to you because I was just taking notes, listening to the work you've done. Is that clip you've used, which is very creepy? I want you to give me your analysis of that. The I think it's the Denver airport drawing. If you can tell me your theory, because one time you said you think it's literally going to play out exactly like how it looks in that drawing. So-
Yeah, I think that's a good example of what we were talking about, the order out of chaos, how the new world order will be sacrificed, and that the real new world order will actually look like the new age that all us truthers are fighting for, that we've actually been tricked to fight for as opposed to fight against or be warned against. That depicts people. If you'll notice, there's this big like death mask person, obviously military guy with a dead with his machine gun. He's all dead, and the Christians are dead, and the whole world is giving up their guns, and there's this new thing, and they're all circled around this thing. It's just obviously picturing a new utopia that the world is united in, freely giving up their guns and everything because of this new peace. And you're looking at dead Christians and dead New World Order. I think that the New World Order is a vehicle, as we currently understand it, is going to be sacrificed because it's going to look like a part of the old system. The old system is being painted as dark as it possibly can be, so that when it goes away, what saves us from it will look much, much brighter. So they're getting the world ready for a savior by making it as terrible as possible. Whatever, if we, truthers out there, if somebody saves us from this new world order that we all think is impossible to be saved from, you know, we're on board with that, regardless of what it is. Supernatural would be better because that would prove to us that it's not a part of this old system. Some rider on the white horse would definitely save us.
Yeah, and that whole painting is very bizarre and creepy, and it has that like girl with the cross and the casket. What's that all about?
I mean, my interpretation of it is that the Christians aren't going to be allowed in this new utopia, and I think that's obviously what the demons are saying.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And yeah, and the thing with the truth movement is, a lot of times people have this attitude that we're so different than the mainstream, and we're so awake. But they actually, in a lot of ways, emulate a lot of the things that mainstream society does. And they're, like you said, if there's an individual, this ascended master, Maitreya, or whatever you want to call him, the Antichrist, who comes around, who promises to end all the corruption and all the pain and suffering. I mean, I've seen the truth movement get in this just flock mentality, where I could absolutely see them, just propping this person up. And I'm going to use an example. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash him politically, but like with a lot of the people, in 2008 with Ron Paul, he was complete. He's just a person, and he represents a lot of ideas I agree with. But it's just this herd mentality of just totally, this infallible person. You just got to be really, 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 really careful of that.
Definitely. I think to make it, we would all have something to say about, something like that, but that's why I think that the alien thing is the best way to not just indoctrinate us that feel like we're seeking the truth, because that would really look like something that has the power to stop all the wars, because they could prove that there was nothing to fight for, quote unquote, because not that the wars were actually fought because of religious differences anyway, because it's just manipulation, and other many different reasons for the wars. But yeah, I think that would be the primary way, not just to get them involved, us that are actually have a chance of resisting it, but those that are American Idol watchers that don't care about anything else. They've just been, they've been indoctrinated enough by the movies and stuff. They're expecting the same thing subconsciously, but that has the ability to unite the world in a world kind of way, a world without borders. What's his name's Zbigniew Brzezinski's book comes true, or because or whatever whoever wrote that book um, because that takes the whole world is united. Oh my God, we're all part of a global civilization, and there's obviously religious connotations to these beings showing up. So this world religion, of course, that Alice Bailey is so emphatic about, then becomes finally a reality, but not a second before then. No, no, Ron Paul or anybody else is going to make the Hindus drop the Hinduism and Islam drop the Islam. It needs to be if Alice Bailey's stuff is going to come true, it has to be nothing short of something like that.
Yeah, and then I was gonna mention as far as we talk about the Theosophical Society, but I haven't. I mean, I'm sure you probably. I haven't heard you mention too much as far as setting up the New World Order and the fact that they could use extraterrestrials as a way to get people to unite. What do you think, though, that the Catholic Church would play a role in all of this?
Well, there's definitely a lot of people that see the Catholic Church as, the entity that has the power somehow to make everybody in a world religion like that. Yeah, I just can't even fathom that happening because they've worked so hard in making everybody hate the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
which is justified pretty much. I mean, but the issue is I can't see how that could be used to unite the world religions. It's not practical because it's been the mask that they wear to make sure everybody gets mad at. The same thing that they've been doing with lots of other stuff. So what role does it play is that it gets really ecumenical and it gets ready to be able to take on this new theology. I think whatever comes back is going to be relevant for the Christian that doesn't know their Bible. It's going to say, no, this is Jesus, and Jesus is cool with this, and and they're going to say stuff like, he was real. This new thing is what he was talking about. It just was a little different than the Bible says because the Bible's been miswritten and all these things. They're going to badmouth the Bible, say yeah it was pretty good for what it would have got changed or whatever. So it's pretty close, but this is what it was really talking about. And the lackadaisical Christian world will be fully embracing this new situation because it will seem like it. Oh my gosh, this is the 1,000 years of peace, and Jesus has returned, and oh my gosh, this is it. Wow, and it's going to look like just beyond the door a utopia. So why wouldn't they go through it? The only people that are going to resist this are the people that are reading their Bibles. That's why the Bible keeps saying, that's why the Catholic Church, most Catholics have never read the Bible. They're told not to read the Bible. They're told they can't understand the Bible. So most Catholics would have never read Matthew 24 and said, hey, you know what, this is looking a whole lot like what was written here or written in Revelation, the book of Revelation, or in Daniel, or in Zechariah, or in Joel. I mean, this is what we were warned about, guys.
Yep. And then one thing I want to hit on the Bible is one you made a great video saying that how you don't think the Bible was changed by the Illuminati. Because if there's one thing I hear all the time, it's that, well, we don't really know about Christianity because it probably, Council of Nicaea was changed by the Illuminati as a tool to control us. That's the one thing I hear all the time.
Definitely. I mean, it's what I call like a rubber stamp that people put on something so they don't have to think about it anymore. It's literally a one-liner that people don't actually understand what they even mean by saying it for the most part. Because if it were true, people shouldn't just claim it. They should be able to prove it. It would be the easiest thing in the world to prove. If the Bible was changed so many times, then because there's more copies of it and fragments and quotations and full codexes and every type of form. There's 5,000 some odd fragments. There's 26,000 other versions on it of different quotations and different things. Different continents, totally different time frames, more than any other text in the history of the world, bar none. There's not even close. I think next is like Homer's Iliad with like 5 or 6 copies, and those differ incredibly, and not just on little things. They differ on huge chunks of the storyline is different in those five existent copies or whatever it is of the Iliad. But here we're talking about 5,000 copies of the Bible, 26,000 other early references of it, and they don't differ at all. It's literally a miracle. I mean, to have in the demonic world, I think Ephesians 6 does go into that. We wrestle not with. Let me get to that real quick.
Oh yeah,
But
that's a great verse.
it shows that at least there's some sort of hierarchy going on there in terms of their ranking, and I also have noticed this in terms of experientially. But for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. There seems to be an authority of demons. Russ Dizdar, we were just talking about, he speaks a lot about in a multiple. Oftentimes there will be what he's termed a power demon that seems to be that there's a number of demons under him that in a deliverance session, in his training sessions, he talks about dealing with that entity first and getting that out before, and then the other ones will, be easier and all this stuff. So, but also basically what I'm saying is that they're in like an exact military system. That demon may be more. There's sort of a obscure kind of prophecy that the Jewish people will realize that their Messiah has wounded hands and wounded feet, that they will petition for their Messiah. They will realize it's Jesus, and that is sort of like a precondition, kind of, sort of. But I think that that's essentially the idea behind his attempt at complete destruction of the Jewish people, because he thinks if he can destroy them all, that he can stop that from happening. It's his only hope, if you think about it. He knows the prophecy that this return spells his end. He knows that, at least on some level, he can't deal with that. But at the same time, he's trying everything possible. You got to give him credit. He's extremely, you know, his work ethic, if nothing else. But so I think that on a demonic level, they're just following orders. That what they understand more than anything else is fear. There's a hierarchy more powerful than the other demons, but they're still ultimately in a military system with Satan as the ultimate person who's directing their primary directives. So they still have an agenda. Their basic agenda is to help build this system, to build the structure of the system that will eventually enthrone him. And that's what this whole New World Order thing is doing. Every single conspiracy that we're talking about, every single